Our theme for today is going to be the structure and power of Congress, and then also the leadership that is in Congress. So I'm going to do things a little bit different today. I'm, again, trying to find ways that work for you guys. And what I'm looking for is, first, from the structure and power of Congress, you got two questions. How does Congress check the powers of the other two branches? And then, what are expressed, implied, and inherent powers? Those are just your basic level 1 questions they recall when we're talking about like our depth of knowledge here. So from our notes, so this will be in your notes. Now the leadership of Congress notes. I'm going to give you the leadership, what they do. You need to find out who they are. So your assignment is to research and discover who the various leaders of Congress are from my notes. So who's the Speaker of the House, the Majority and Minority Leader, and then the Majority Whip and Minority Whip, all in the House of Representatives. Then, in the House of Representatives, what members of the House of Representatives is on or are on the Rules Committee? Who is the chairman? President of the Senate, then you need to find that. Who's the President pro tempore? Who's the Majority and Minority Leaders of the Senate and Majority and Minority Whips? Then the question I want you to have the answer from Leadership of Congress notes is, what does a filibuster hold in a cloture? Then at the end of all these notes, you should be able to answer, and you need to, this little FRQ question. It kind of goes with the first part. It also kind of goes back to some other stuff we talked about in the beginning of this class. So answer the free response question from notes. Name and explain 3 ways that Congress has oversight over the executive branch. So identify what those are, and then explain how Congress has the oversight of the executive branch. Pretty easy stuff. I'm going to go to my notes. Let me first do this. What members are. So here is our notes. So the structure and power of Congress. Again, we have 2 House legislation, 2 chambers. We've talked about a lot of this stuff right here. This is more review, so you can look at number 1. I would know it. Don't be surprised if it's on our quiz or test. We talked about that, so go ahead and just look at it, write it down, paraphrase it. Now, we've also talked about this, but we're going to look at some of the powers delegated or granted, powers granted to the national government. So you have expressed or enumerated powers actually in the Constitution. We talked about this earlier, so I'm going to go kind of fast. So when we're talking about the national government, here's what they can do. They can levy taxes. House revenue bills begin in the House. We'll talk about that more with budget. Spend money, borrow money. This is a big one. Regulate foreign, interstate, Indian commerce, foreign trade, interstate trade, Indian commerce. This clause has been tested free, of course, due to the broad interpretation of the Constitution. Establish bankruptcy laws, coin money, establish all these other little things here. Create courts inferior to the Supreme Court. Define and publish piracy, which is kind of what we're dealing with now in the Supreme Court when it goes to the internet. Declare war. Remember how we get around that. Raise and support Army and Navy. So these are the actual powers spelled out in the Constitution. You remember the elastic clause or the enumerated powers? These are the powers not expressed in the Constitution but implied. McCulloch versus Maryland and the creation of the National Bank. So the examples of the National Bank: conscription, paper money, Air Force, CIA. And then you have this thing here called strict and loose constructionist approaches. And that just has to do with the interpretation of the Constitution. Strict interpretation or loose interpretation. And that would affect implied powers, because how you interpret the Constitution would then directly reflect what powers you think the Constitution should have. If it's strict, if the Constitution doesn't state it, you shouldn't do it. If it's loose, that's that implied powers, that's that elastic clause coming into effect. And that's a broad interpretation there. Remember, just because the federal government didn't say with the National Bank or a superior federal government or Trump state government, it was implied through the elastic clause. The necessary and proper clause, we have to do whatever is necessary and proper to protect the nation. So that's the powers they have. And then inherent powers, powers that are simply by virtue of being a sovereign government. There's some examples of what those are. So here's some institutional powers, and these have to do with checks and balances, kind of with what our FRQ is about. You also have that sheet from the beginning of the class that helps you with this. So Senate ratifies treaties by 2/3 of vote. Senate approves presidential appointments with majority vote, presidential appointments to their cabinets, and also presidential appointments to the Supreme Court. It's called the Senate Judiciary Committee. House votes for impeachment, and you need a majority vote, and then Senate tries the impeachment. 2/3 vote needed to convict. Last one, Bill Clinton, President Clinton got impeached by the House, and did not get convicted by the Senate. Again, who can get impeached? The President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States. House elects President if there's no electoral majority. Senate selects the Vice President. We already talked about that in the last unit. They remember in Constitution they propose an amendment with 2/3 vote in both houses, and it goes to the states to get ratified by 3/4 state legislators, and how they ratify that depends upon the state. And each can seat, unseat, and punish own members of government, and we do that whatever through other controversies. Again, look at one of the other things on here is this, the Congress can, veto something by the president, or they can, the president can veto something. Congress can override that veto. So that's another way they can check the powers of the president, is overriding that veto. Powers denied to Congress. These are just a couple of little things that they cannot do. We could talk about that. Now, leadership. This is the other phase of our notes. So the leadership of Congress. So you got the Speaker of the House. Now, the Speaker of the House, this is their job. They preside over the House for the majority party. The party has majority. The person, longest standing, most respected member is going to become Speaker. This is very important. They appoint and select conference committees. Committee work in Congress is where actually a lot of the work for Congress takes place. So it's very important when it comes to that. Now, in Congress, there is this thing called a standing committee in the rule of committees. A standing committee, that means there's permanent committees, and that's 22 standing committees, and the Senate has 16 standing committees. And so we'll talk more about what the committee system is, but these are permanent committees. So they appoint and select conference committees. They appoint rules committee members and its chairman. Assigns bills to committees, which is very, very powerful. You can kill a bill, let's say on agricultural funding, by assigning that bill to the urban development committee. You're killing that bill basically by assigning it to the wrong committee. You're third in line for the president after the vice president. Informal powers means you're the one who has access to the media, you're the one who speaks for your party, and influences agenda on the House by using your authority to persuade other members of your party to vote a certain way. Now, the majority leader and minority leader, partisan positions chosen by party members, and their floor leaders and legislative strategists. Then you got majority whip and minority whip. These are the people that actually break out whips and whip people that are falling asleep in like Congress, much like, not in government class. Let's just say some other class that's not as exciting as government. Students fall asleep. Use that as an example of the whip. You would just whip them to get them back in order. I'm actually joking about the whole whip thing. But the assistant floor leaders inform party leaders of mood of House in regards to if we're going to vote on something. Keep nose count on important votes. Persuade party members to vote with party. And liaison between party leadership and rank and file membership. Rules committee sets legislative calendar agenda. Traffic cop for the House. Again, they set when things are going to be proposed, things are going to be looked at, what bills are going to be voted on, things of this nature. Very important. Issue rules for debate and amendment. Open rule allows, form, or closed rule does not. Okay, so who's on this committee is one of your questions you need to tell me. Now, Senate. The Vice President is the President of the Senate, presides over the Senate, votes in case of ties, basically a ceremonial job. President pro temp, ceremonial job. President in absence of Vice President, fourth in line for the Vice President. Majority leader, these are the people that actually would have power in the Senate, and minority leaders. True leader of the Senate, recognized first for all debates with power to filibuster. And you need to tell me what that is. That gives majority leader strong influence on bills. Very strong. I'd put a star next to number 2 on your notes, or whatever you put that in your notes. Put a star there. True leader of the majority party influences committee assignments for senators. Again, very important, because that's where the true work of Congress is. Influences Senate's agenda along with minority leader in former powers of using the media. Again, just like the leader, the House, the Speaker of the House. Minority leader and party leader whips, same as the House, which means they have the same rules. They're doing the same exact thing here. They're not same people, by the way, not the same people. So what's a filibuster and a hold? Filibuster is a way to, in the Senate, or just in Congress, a way non-stop debate to kill a bill. A threat of filibuster is almost as good as a filibuster itself. This is how you do this. You do this within the Senate, and it places pressure on bill sponsors to change part of the bill, especially effective at the end of the term. Can be ended by 3/5 vote of cloture. Now, so what is the cloture? You got to tell me that. I kind of tell you there. So what's 3/5 vote of cloture in the Senate? And then another thing is you have holds. And a hold is any senator can place a hold on a bill. And a lot of them do this way to delay it going to, be up for discussion. And so this delays the bill indefinitely. And these are usually used to, again, by key members. They're used now for policy purposes to stop a judicial nomination because the nominee is ideologically unacceptable to a senator, or stop a bill. To exercise this, a senator informs the floor leader to exercise the hold, and he or she does not want the bill to be considered. Now, the implied threat alone of a filibuster in our Senate now will kill a lot of bills, so they won't even do it. And so that's big now. So like it says here, the implied threat of a filibuster and the need for a unanimous consent for the Senate to proceed on business result in a bill nomination being held up. Holds can be placed anonymously. And so with the power of the hold here, with what the hold is, and with the filibuster, these two things kill bills a lot of times in the Senate, why things will not get done. Okay, so that will cover Congress 3. So go back and look at the questions and try to answer the questions from our note. You're going to look up the leadership positions, and we'll discuss that tomorrow. Don't be surprised if there's a quiz tomorrow on this stuff and some basic, just level 1 recall questions there, okay? Hope you had a great day. I will see you guys tomorrow